Introducing Wrist Time. Uncover your own behaviors, trends, and preferences, experiencing your collection in a new way. Log specific dates, activities, and adventures with your watches. Gain collection insights with your personal wear metrics and discover trends within our global community of 1916 Company collectors, destined to become your newest habit. Download the 1916 Company app and its new features to start tracking today. Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. We are back with Creator Conversations, a series of talks with folks who are integral to the industry we love. Today, a returning champion. We have the General Manager and Partner at Ulysse Nardin, Matthieu Haverlan. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Tim.
So today we're going to talk about Ulysse Nardin over the last year because it's been about a year since we were last in the studio. So you had just become General Manager at the time. What has the last year been like for you? Now, you've been with the company 8 years, but what has the last year been like since you became GM?
It's been an emotional roller coaster. In a way, like, it's been super intense. When you go from running sales and distribution to running a company, it's a different job. But I mean, that has been honestly the best year ever for me at Ulysse Nardin. I think for many reasons, making some tough decisions. First and foremost, I would say being able to really lead, the brand vision and putting into practice, seeing the benefit also of, some of our key initiatives, and also to be able really to have an opportunity to develop the right culture within the company. I want UN to become a cult brand around collectors. And for that, first and foremost, I need the brand to be cult within the company itself. So that has been really taking a lot of time for me in terms of, people management and making sure that, people are really breathing UN from within.
Now, I'm just going to attack this directly because I know a lot of people have it on their mind. But in the last year, there have been some highs, there have been some lows. Deloitte named you one of the best managed companies in the Swiss industry generally, not just the watch industry. And at the same time, there was a headline that Ulysse Nardin was drawing on a state program that would allow you to keep talented staff like watchmakers, artisans on payroll during times of industry contraction. So the industry was down globally last year. This is not unique to any one company. Tell me a little bit about how the decision was made to use that program and to what extent you were able to keep people on staff for better days ahead.
During COVID, we were the first company to close the manufacture, to keep people safe. And we made it public. We are independent, we are entrepreneurs, so we need to take responsibility for what we do. We are a full-fledged manufacturer, so we do internally 100% of the movement, and therefore also we employ full-time employees. Not to name it, I used to work for a company where 20% of the workforce was temp. As soon as the business was going a bit south, those 20% basically off, the books. It's not what we do. We do produce in-house. We are a production company, so we need to be able to adapt, to the highs and lows in terms of demand versus production output. So yes, we benefited from that in Switzerland. I mean, we are not by far the only one, but we were among the first one also to make it public, to be fully transparent. But today, I would say pretty much all the Swiss watchmaking industry has been, benefiting from state aids, or we call it RHT. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. We did not get rid of anyone. We are keeping all the key know-hows, of behind the watches. There is more than 50 different know-hows to be able to make an Ulysse Nardin watch, and that's the most important point.
Now, I also thought it was interesting, we spoke before we started rolling about Christophe Claret, which went out of business in 2023, and you were talking about how you were sort of future-proofing all of your collaborations with Claret, like the Grand Deck Tourbillon, like the Mega Yacht, the Corsair. You were saying that you were actually bringing those capabilities in-house to protect those watches and those owners for the future.
Yes, absolutely, for the servicing of the watch, and in case of the Corsair, to be able to finish the series.
And I think it's really interesting because I've talked to other brands that worked with Claret and had parts from Claret, and when I asked them, well, can you service the watch? Their answer was just flat no. So it's great to see that you're taking care of those customers too. Now, in terms of the Deloitte Award, it was for a combination of management acumen, innovation, culture, forward vision. Basically, it was Deloitte Private ranking you among the best managed companies inside of Switzerland. What did that entail? Because that seems like a pretty big honor.
I think at the end of the day, you know, it's a recognition of being entrepreneurs, you know, who have a skin in the game, who, you know, love watches and trying, you know, to do the best they can. I was also awarded, you know, by Revolution magazine the best leader of the year in the watchmaking industry. I did not talk so much about it because I feel there is so much to be done, yet that, you know, I don't want to be bragging about what we do. So yes, you know, we were glad about those awards, but at the end of the day, you know, we want to keep making better products. We want to get, you know, closer to the collectors community. We want to hear the feedback. We want also to work and spend the time with what I believe to be the right opinion leaders. That's what matters the most. And I think the key element is, because it's been a management buyout and we own the business, is sharing that long-term vision. You know, I've been here 8 years, as you said at the beginning. I have no intention, you know, to quit or to change job anytime soon.
And that's important to remember. For those of you who haven't seen the first part of our discussion from last year, in 2022, Ulysse Nardin and Gerard Perregaux, sister company, were bought back from the group that owned them by a consortium of the company's managers and executives. So this is very much a sort of owner-operator company, so that kind of sheds some light on their philosophy, but also on the Deloitte Award. Now, in terms of product development, you're pressing ahead. You've got your 5 fundamental model lines, you've got the Freak, you've got Marine, you've got the Classico, you've got the Diver, and you've got the Blast. And it looks like this past year, you have quite a bit of news in the world of the Blast. So let's jump into these watches. They're not necessarily novelties. These aren't under any kind of embargo, but they are all new as of the last 12 months. So take me on a tour of what's happening at the high end of the Blast collection.
Blast stands for high horology in a contemporary design. So you're going to have on one side, for instance, the Moonstruck. So the movement was not new to Ulysse Nardin. You know that we have a strong heritage with astronomical timepieces. If you think back to the Astrolabium Galileo Galilei, that astrolabe that Rolf Schneider asked Ludwig to be able to put in a wristwatch. When it was, you know, a huge clock. So that was really the beginning of Ulysse Nardin back 30 years ago, manufacturing astronomical timepieces. But we wanted to modernize the simplest, I would say, version of the astronomical complication called the Moonstruck.
Yes.
So you've got 6 different complications, astronomical complication in that very modern case. We had also to fine-tune the movement to be able to fit that shape of the case compared to the more chunkier platinum version or rose gold we had before.
Yeah, because the watch came out a little over a decade ago, and its original form, it was more of the Ulysse Nardin design that you associate with the 2000s, maybe the early 2010s. Large, precious metal, a little bit more difficult to wear. The watch has not gotten small by any means, but I couldn't wear the original Moonstruck, whereas this is actually a pretty good fit here.
We do spend a lot of time, you know, on the ergonomics, because obviously the Moonstruck, there is no way that, you know, we could fit it in a 42 mil. So therefore, how do we make it super wearable, even though it's a 45 mil? So the way we did it is, and I think it's the way the Blast has been conceived, is very short lugs, very good integration with the strap, and hence I think a good fitting.
And, you know, I'll say for a watch that gives you the position of the Earth, the Sun, the Moon, the phase of the Moon, and world time, it's probably as small as you could make it. I can't imagine it getting a lot smaller than this. So being familiar with the original, this almost feels like a mid-sized version of the original Moonstruck, and I'm all for it. A fun piece on a lot of levels. I'm kind of curious, with watches like this that are very niche, I have to imagine that it's a small take rate. Do you have a separate atelier for like horlogerie and series production watches? Like, is there a crew dedicated to this type of watch inside the manufacturer?
Yes, absolutely. We've got a dedicated of, I believe there are 12 high horology watchmakers. So they're going to work on the blast Moonstruck, the Hourstriker, the Freewheel. They're also working on the Freecase. We still do produce 2 to 3, automatons, minute repeaters, like you have in the Genghis Khan, like you have, in the Alexander the Great per year. They are, the one making them and also servicing them.
So, continuing through the late debuting high horology pieces, this is fascinating because now we have a striking watch with flying tourbillon. We've got silicon in the escapement. We've got a remarkable collaboration with sort of a high-end audio partner. And now this is not the beginning of that collaboration, but it is the latest. Tell me a little bit about the Blast Hourstriker.
That's my favorite blast. I love it for different reasons. First is it goes back to Rolf Schneider. When he had that visit with his wife in Venice, and he saw those bronzes, hitting the gongs of a bell.
Oh, in St. Mark's Square, right?
Yes, absolutely. So that was really the beginning of the era of Ulysse Nardin making, again, charming pieces on wristwatches. So this is the first thing that I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about the Blast Hourstriker. In Hourstriker, most of the time, the Hourstriker will hit, the hour. Yes. Every time there is an hour passing by, you will basically hear, one charm. Here, it works like a bit of a repeater, meaning that every hour you will have one gong. So 1 hour, 1 o'clock, one gong, 2 hours, 2 gongs, 3 hours, 3 gongs. So you really hear the hours passing by. Every half an hour also you've got a gong. So I like about the fact that there is a repeater functioning into that Hourstriker mechanism. I also like the fact that the whole functioning of the movements, striking elements are on the front.
The rack, the snail, all the elements.
Absolutely. And you have also a flying tourbillon at 6 o'clock, and we had to find a way to curve the gong basically to go around. If you see here at 6 o'clock, yes, it goes around the tourbillon. So that was a big challenge in order to be able to keep, the quality of the sound, bending basically the gong.
See if I can fire this. That is fantastic. And I have to say, the strike governor is almost completely silent. It's very, very subtle. Tell me a little bit about the resonator on the back and the partnership that led to that.
We wanted to partner with an expert in the hi-fi industry, and we found a way to work with De Vialet. So for 2 reasons. Why? Because they were really pioneering technologies into their own field, and pioneering rings a bell at Ulysse Nardin. And the other element is Ulysse Nardin, who is part of the management of De Vialet, and eventually we end up developing especially the membrane that you have in the back. So it's a 0.3 millimeter thick membrane in titanium, and we basically engineered that part with them in order to have something super thin, super light, yet that gives a very clear and loud sound, even though it's a rose gold case.
Yes, I think that's one of the great challenges with any kind of a striking watch. You don't want to have to make all of them out of titanium, which is all that would be used if you had to strike and resonate through the case. But if you can get a freestanding resonator and a way to communicate the sound, particularly with this hollow case back, then you can make it out of whatever you want. It could be gold, it could be platinum, it could be any dense material.
Yeah.
So really cool stuff, but I think this might be your favorite, and this is mine. So, of course, this is based on 2 different threads of Ulysse Nardin engineering history. One, the Freewheel series, yep, and then the other, the unique constant force escapement that first debuted, I believe, back in 2014. It's an elastic resonator, a little bit like your sister company, Girard-Perregaux, but a fraction of the size. Tell me all about this watch.
I think the inspiration from the Freewheel at the beginning was mysterious clocks, where there is some elements that you see and there is some elements that are hidden. So there is really a playfulness, I would say, around this watch.
In that you could see the drive, but you can't see the gears meshing.
Absolutely. Visually, it's really striking. So you really see some of the different, elements of the watch. Whether it's a power reserve, whether it's a Constance Force tourbillon that you see at 6 o'clock. You see some of the gear train. And we wanted to do I would say, an artistic variation of the Freewheel. And we were inspired by the Marquetery. You have Marquetery of wood, you have Marquetery of straw. And we said, okay, what if we could invent a new way of doing Marquetery? Silicone rings the bells for UN. It's a big part of our modern history. And therefore, we challenge ourselves to be able to do a Marquetery with actually layers of silicone. So you've got here 103 small parts of silicone. They are between 0.3 and 0.33 millimeter thick, and they are all applied on the dial.
Now, how is this done? Because I feel like to work with that material without leaving dust or debris or residue, it would almost have to be like a clean room.
It is in a, made in a room where you've got, a very hair system. I mean, it's like working in a laboratory. I hope, by the way, also you will visit soon our manufacturer, so you'll be able basically to see that. So invitation has been sent.
Accepted.
And so that's absolutely, the way to do it. What I love also about the fact that you have a whole piece of silicone on the back that you see over there. Very nice, blue shade. And it's a manual wind watch with a 7 days power reserve.
So this is a little bit like a continuation of what started in the 2000 with the Sonata Silicium, where you had a silicone dial element, and it was there just for style. It was there to embody sort of a symbol of what was inside the watch. Indeed. And so here we have that silicone elastic escapement system, and it's not just a silicone escapement, because many companies have that. It is a deformable elastic structure that eliminates many elements of the escapement and the oscillator. So you make your own silicone in-house. You've got this constant force device in silicone. When I think of silicone and Ulysse Nardin, of course, we go back to the Freak in 2001. But since 2006, you've had an interest in Sigatech, which kind of provides that technology in-house. How have you integrated Sigatech? Because now even the most basic UN 150 and 118 in-house movements do have the silicone hairspring, the escapement. Where do you see the Sigatech implementation going forward? Because I think everyone sees that as unique given your size.
Let me stand back. What's the purpose of Ulysse Nardin? Why do we exist as watchmakers, right? We exist to keep advancing our industry. That's the raison d'être. That's why we live. That's the reason why Ulysse Nardin and Paul-David Nardin, his son, pioneered, and brought accuracy to another level in marine chronometer. If you look at the period of Rolf Schneider, trying to simplify some of the most complex movements, like the Perpetua calendar, in the pursuit of making better product. If you think about silicone, we did not invent by mistake silicone. We wanted to find a material that will make some of the key components of the watch even more sustainable and resistant in the future. So I think, going forward, I want to make sure that there is 2/3 of our R&D that are really going into the direction of making better product and advancing watchmaking, and 1/3, which I will call is a bit maybe show off. You have the grinder technology, the most effective automatic winding system on the industry. When it will be, we don't have it.
We don't have the grinder on the table today. See our first video for more on that.
It's on the Freak One, it's on the Freak S. The grinder is able to power automatically the Freak S movement with 2 oscillating organs. It's a first in the industry. So now going back to Sigatech, obviously the goal is to supply the Ulysse Nardin watches. We do supply also other brands. So for me, the purpose of Sigatech goes beyond UN or beyond GP. It's servicing the industry as a whole. In a way, it's like Donzé Cadrans. We own Donzé Cadrans that makes some of the most beautiful enamel die. That's probably the oldest still living atelier fully dedicated to enameling in Switzerland. But we do at Donzé Cadrans about 1,000 die a year. Only 100 goes to Ulysse Nardin. The rest of the 900 goes to other brands. So the mission of Ulysse Nardin is obviously making better products, but also serving the industry and advancing watchmaking.
And I've always thought it was interesting that a lot of the most successful independents also seem to have sister companies that are pure component suppliers or technology suppliers to the industry. Andreas Streller has Urteil, Kari Voutilainen has a whole constellation of companies, Grubel Forsey has Completime, Moser has Precision Engineering. You have Donzé, which is very traditional enameled dials, and you've got Sigatech, which is the silicon. And I don't know how well this is known out in the industry, but in general, the silicon hairspring technology in particular, that's something that was jointly developed by Patek, Swatch as a group, and Rolex. And then I think you are the smallest company that's able to make your silicon hairsprings in-house.
And the first.
And the first.
2001, yeah.
So that is for the industry as a whole, and it's a nice, I guess, like fire engine to have drawing you along. Tell me a little bit about Donzé and what goes on there, because I think whereas Sigatech is very computerized and modern, Donzé is very, very traditional, and I think it's interesting to contrast the two.
I think, after 8 years, I found the right way to say what Ulysse Nardin is. And the way I would pitch it to you would be, we are the oldest watchmaking startup. I like the contrast of obviously oldest and startup. Oldest is to say that we've been in the game since 1846 and we never stopped manufacturing clocks and watches. And startup because we've been at the forefront of what we've been doing from the very beginning. So UN is for me the oldest watchmaking startup. In regards to the enameling, I like because it's really contrasting massively with Sigatech. Sigatech is startup. Heritage, oldest part of Ulysse Nardin is definitely the enameling part, which is one of the most ancestral métiers d'art. When I was at GLC, I remember we had a couple of enamelers, and we were very proud of that. And when I entered Ulysse Nardin and I discovered, I didn't know they had, I remember it was the first November 2016, and I toured the factory and I realized that they owned Donzé Cadrans, and that they had 7, 8 in-house enamelers. I said to myself, that's absolutely insane. I thought we were among the leading one before, and now I'm discovering that there is 3 times more in-house enameler.
And that's compared to Jaeger-LeCoultre, which is an enormous operation.
Absolutely. So very proud of that. It's something that we are cultivating. You can't, if tomorrow you want to apply and become an enameler, you can't, because you can't be trained at school. So you have to be hired by people that already master enameling, like Donzé Cadrans, that will be trained. So in fact, all the future enamelers that are being trained are at the beginning, not elemental at all. They can be, micropainters, they can be watchmakers, and to be able to master all the different spectrum of enameling, which is, the grand feu, the champ levé, the cloisonné. To be able to do a cloisonné dial, it takes something like 6 to 7 years of experience doing the enameling, mastering the first techniques, to be able to do it ultimately. So it's one of our gems, I would say, and we must protect it, we must nourish it. At the same time, we are challenging, and I'm challenging the team to be also a bit more creative in terms of enameling, because when I sneak over there and I see some of the dies that we make for other brands, I'm challenging a bit the guys to say, okay, be a bit more, innovative for Ulysse Nardin. I'm sure there is some cool stuff that we could bring to the table. Enameling, but there is a part of enameling where I think we can have a bit more fun.
And I appreciate that. And believe me, check out the Classico collection on their website. I can't actually describe some of these things for reasons that are incredibly not safe for work, but definitely worth your while. What else is going on in terms of how you view yourself in the industry? Let's just talk about scale. When we spoke a year ago, I think the idea was to target 10,000 units per year, And in the course of speaking to collectors and maybe getting a better sense of the brand's identity, you decided that maybe that should be more like 5,000, which would put you fairly close to where, say, a Moser or a Richard Mille is in terms of volume. So that makes it more, I think, viable to compare Ulysse Nardin to the indies, because if you've got a Moser, if you've got a Journe, if you've got a Grubel 4C, if you've got a Debatoon, and those are your comparables, you've really got to not be making more than about 5,000 a year, because once you get to 10,000, you're sort of an industrial operation. Then we start talking about big group brands. So do you see yourself as the smallest large watchmaker or the biggest small watchmaker? Essentially, do you identify with the likes of Moser and Journe, or do you and Richard Mille, or do you identify more with like the Blancpain, the Breguet, the Jaeger-LeCoultre type company?
So I see ourselves as the biggest indie, the biggest, smallest one. The main difference is we've been in the game since 1846. So we've got the heritage of a Blancpain, of a Breguet. We have a different story, but we have nothing to be ashamed, and we have to be proud of, you know, the first 30 years of Ulysse Nardin establishing as a high horology workshop. Then the 100 of years where we've been, leading chronometry. I mean, if you think about, you know, the 70s, 80s, 19th century, the British, the French used to be leading the game in terms of Mariette chronometer. And Ulysse Nardin and his son, Paul David Nardin, had that vision of making an even better instrument that led Ulysse Nardin supplying the top 15 navies in the world. So we've got a strong heritage. Having said that, the way I see UN and the way also I want the teams to feel UN is, you know, to be the older brother of the indies. And for that reasons, you will not see that at Watches and Wonder, but you will see that at Dubai Watch Week. We will be launching a collaboration piece. And on purpose, I decided not to have a huge booth, but to be within the non-branded environment of the indies. You know, I'm not traveling for the first quarter at all because there is so much going on the brand, and I need, you know, to spend some time at HQ. The only exception that I'm making is this week in the US to see you and to see, you know, Tim Mancuso, Kate, collector that are based in Philly. And, you know, we had yesterday a dinner with 45 collectors that flew from Singapore, UK, all over the US. That's what matters to me.
And I like that idea of being there with the indies at Watches and Wonders, because if you remember back to SEHH, back when you had all of the large Richemont brands, the big group brands, majors like AP, and then you would have the Carré des Horlogers, where all the cool indies were, and that was a very chill place where you could feel free to walk up without an appointment and actually hold a watch as opposed to looking for one in a vitrine. So that's great that you're going to be more accessible at the show. In terms of accessibility year-round, let's talk a little bit about the client and product development. So you canvass the field when you go out, you meet with clients, you do dinners, you get in direct contact. How do you use that to develop watches? Because on the one hand, if you just ask people, what do you want? You're never going to get a Freak. You're never going to get a Sonata. You're going to get something that looks like last year's watch, only maybe a little bit better. How do you balance innovation against trying to give people what they want specifically?
Excellent question. And I'm going to tell you why, because that reminds me of the first really big decision I made when, you know, being at the helm of Ulysse Nardin. That was pretty much right after the interview we did, you know, back in February last year, where I remember, I think I told you that 2025 we were thinking of relaunching Marine, which is not going to happen this year. And it's not going to happen probably next year. For one reason is I canceled what was supposed to be launched this year. It cost us quite a bit of money, but I did it because at the time that that product has been designed, we were listening to the market, listening to our retailers, listening to some of collectors. You need to come with that exact watch, which was, you know, the integrated metal bracelet sport watch. You need to do something around that, and, you know, there is an opportunity with Marine. So we developed something quite rapidly I did cancel that because I knew that when we're going to launch that product, I want that product to last for decades. And once the product is right, I just want that every 7-8 years, we keep improving a bit here and there. Therefore, when we're going to launch that product, probably beginning of 2027, it's basically the best marine we'll ever had. And there will be also some innovative component into it. Because I think the innovation needs to be really a red thread across all our collection. Because it's what we do and it's who we are.
So let's talk a little bit about how that relates to your collaborations. So obviously consulting with collectors, with dealers, kind of canvassing the room at the manufacturer, you might come up with ideas that advance what a Ulysse Nardin watch could be, but at the same time you got to give up a little bit of control when you bring in an outside collaborator. So let's speak specifically about the watch on your wrist. Tell me all about this, because this is a blast with a solid dial, and that's the opposite of what a blast normally is. How do we get here?
We need some of that at Ulysse Nardin. As long as we keep, being very serious watchmaker in regards of the, high horology, we need to challenge ourselves. And when you want to challenge yourself, you need to meet people that are not related to what you do. So when we met 4 years ago for the first time, Volod, so Amoureuxpeintre, he's a Russian, a very talented fashion designer. He's like 27, 28 today. He's been working with Virgil Abloh. He's been doing a lot of collaboration with Nike. Very inspired by street culture, by the soccer culture. And so we said that it was the right person with whom we wanted to do a project in an industry that has nothing to do with watches. And in a way, he liked the Blast very much. So he felt that Blast was a platform, the Blast, Skeleton X. He was also wearing the Blast Dual Time for the last couple of years. And then, honestly, it was like white paper. That's basically the canvas. That's a frame. Put in your vision. So obviously, it's a Blast Skeleton X when you look at the product, but everything has nothing to do with a regular Blast. First of all, the logo, Ulysse Nardin. You don't see at all the anchor, whether it's on the crown, UN, here. So this was a party pre. We said, okay, should we really remove the anchor from the product? We had to trust the vision of the artist on that. The hands are different, the inner bezel, the titanium case has been really treated, the whole watch actually, in a very monochrome, minimalistic approach. He likes, the black, the gray, the white. And then he was inspired by, sometimes in offices you've got those transparent, yet you don't see through.
Like an opaque panel of glass. Absolutely. Between offices.
So he wanted to replicate that in a watch. So we had basically to try to make a kind of a frosted sapphire glass, which has never been done in the watchmaking industry before. So we worked with 3 suppliers. We prototyped 5 different watches. After the 4th, I said to myself, you know what, let's give it one more try, because it was, honestly, when I said it was the most challenging project on the habillage, on the outdoor part.
And I should mention that's important because a lot of people are going to think, oh, that's a piece of plastic.
No.
No, that dial's not plastic.
No, and actually I think the best way to see it is putting some light behind the watch.
Oh my, yes.
And you're going to see the skeletonization of the movement. You're going to see, the balance wheel moving at 6 o'clock.
So this is basically a fashion designer, Amoureuxpeintre, and it's a watch that's only going to be made in 29 pieces. That's a very limited edition. It's not 229, not 2,229. So I assume it's got to be considerable tooling costs to build something this bespoke in such a small number.
We do spend most of the money and the investment that we do it in R&D. We are very much an R&D driven company as opposed to a marketing driven company. And we need to challenge ourselves on projects like this. So, 29 pieces, by $32,000 and if I look at the cost, we are definitely not making money out of it, but that is not the purpose. The purpose is to challenging ourselves to do things that has never been done before.
And it's a very impressive watch, first and foremost, because it's so wearable. I think One mental hurdle a lot of people have to get over with Ulysse Nardin is that they remember the watches of the 2000s, which were often huge. And while they had high inherent quality, they were often difficult to wear. How do you consider ergonomics these days when you design a watch? Because I know we talked a little bit about it with the redesign of the Moonstruck, now a much more wearable watch. This is also a much smaller case than you would have featured in the past. Do you use a wrist modeler? Is there like a reference wrist? Is there one guy in the office who's like the everyman? Like, how do you figure out what the baseline is for wrist size?
For sure, I think when we prototype, the watches goes on much more wrists than before. And when I'm saying much more wrist, big wrist, small wrist, men and women. Because even though given the size of our watches, we've been really focusing much more on male collectors, we must not forget about women. And therefore, even yesterday night when we had that dinner and I was discussing with Kate, she's a woman collector, I'm taking a lot into account what she's saying.
And that's Kate Mancuso. Hey, Kate.
It doesn't have to be, full of diamond. So I'm giving you an example. What we are currently doing, and that will be probably 2026, 2027. I want to probably upgrade FreakX as a product. And most of the time that we are spending currently on that are on the proportion. Lug to lug, inclination of the case, shape, having a lot of prototype in between to put it on the wrist, to put it on strap, to feel. Does it feel nice? Is it something that you want to wear? On that aspect, a brand like Apple has been doing a much better job than many watchmakers. Or even Cartier, I know that the way they've developed their bracelet on the tank, they do spend a lot of time there. This is where also we are spending much more time in order for the product to feel right. And trying to have the best proportion. I mean, a Freak will never be in 39 mil.
No, it shouldn't be.
It's a nonsense and you need to leave the movement a bit of breath. Having said that, can we find the perfect proportion? Are the perfect proportion maybe 1 millimeter smaller, 1.2 millimeters smaller in terms of lug to lugs, refining a bit the shape of the lugs just to have a product that fits even better on the wrist. And because we don't want to do too many variations, I want to keep focusing the product offer on fewer products. It's even more important that we are making something that fits well.
Now that you are looking at that 5,000 watch range, that does put you on par with like a Lange, a Richard Mille, a Moser in terms of volume. And for brands like that, I think retail strategy and customer experience, it can be more important. You'd spoken to me last year about how you culled your retail network from over 600 doors to about 280. A year later, how is that working out in terms of, I guess, the quality control at the dealer level and the experience the customer can expect?
I think the strategy has not changed, is that we keep focusing on wholesale. I like to say that we are a wholesale brand with a retail mindset.
So you're not a big fan of the factory-owned boutique?
No, because I think our main job is to make the best watches possible. The job of our partner is to basically sell them. Having said that, I want to keep the distribution tight and under control. So obviously, we can only recommend prices, but we obviously strongly suggest. We want the watches to end up on the wrist of the right client, the one that buy the product for what it is, the one that will wear the watches. That's why I think at the end of the day, the secondary market for UN is very healthy. Obviously, I'm keep on buying back product.
That continues.
Yes, I'm continuing to do it. No longer new product because we used to have the wrong dealers selling those watches on secondary market, but I'm still making sure that I'm buying entry level of the most entry level in terms of prices for the most important pieces. Buying FreakX's. If there is a Freak one showing up below retail, I will also buy back because for me it's a way also to show trust and confidence for the collectors. And at the end of the day, delivering more revenue is not a goal. It's not what we aim for. We aim for manufacturing same number of watches, better products, and selling them to the collectors and the right client. This is what matters the most.
And I kind of agree with you there, because if you look at FP Journe, which is kind of the model for success in the indie space, the word more disappeared from their vocabulary probably a decade ago. They've been capped at their 1,000 watches. That hasn't stopped the brand from growing or the equity in the name from growing. So I think you're on the right track there. In terms of customer experience, what do you do regarding service, which I have found to be the worst part of luxury watch ownership? Have you been able to take it regional, and do you have goals for like time and service for a watch?
So servicing is definitely key. What we do is so for a indie brand, we do spend a lot of money to have subsidiaries. We have a subsidiary in the US, in Boca Raton. We've got one in China, in Hong Kong. We've got some in Europe. So we are covering pretty much all the main hubs with UN people, UN watchmakers servicing with the watches. High-end complication, they will have to be serviced at the manufacturer, but most of the regular movement now are serviced here in the US in Boca Raton.
Local service.
Local service. So that helps, to be much faster. Another element is we developed what we call a shipping kit, meaning that we basically ship that kit to you. You put your watch, send it back to us, so we make it easy in the process to basically bring the watch to our watchmakers.
Which is great if you're in Nebraska and there's no UN dealer local.
Absolutely.
That's a great sort of white glove way to do it and make it almost Amazon easy. So finally, I just want to ask you real quick, what do you see as your greatest challenge in the year ahead, and what do you see as the greatest opportunity?
The most important for me challenge is to be able to tell our great story of a watchmaker in a very modern and engaging way through social media. You've got on social media, which I think it's a key platform for me to be able to tell the UN stories. On one side, you're going to have the content creators that do super well in terms of content, in terms of engaging content. And then you've got luxury brands that delivers and produce highly produced, overproduced content that are not engaging enough. And I want to make sure that I find that sweet spot of being able to tell in a very authentic way the story of Ulysse Nardin. And the goal that I set to myself is to try to be the leader on YouTube within the next 3 years at the luxury brands, telling basically the story of who we are in a modern way and very engaging way. So I don't have the roadmap yet. I have the objective, I have the ambition, but that probably is going to be one of my biggest challenges of the years to come.
Excellent. So you're going to conquer the world through YouTube. That sounds familiar.
Yes, I mean that's a necessity. I think it's a necessity for engaging with collectors. It's a necessity also to engage, with a future generation of customers. My wife, she was having a coffee at one of her friends. She's an interior designer. And at some point, the kid, he's 13 years old, he heard my wife talking with his friends about Ulysse Nardin, right? He went downstairs and he said to my wife, "Yeah, you mentioned Ulysse Nardin?" And she said, "Yes, my husband runs Matthieu Ulysse Nardin." And the kid said, "Matthieu Haverlan from Ulysse Nardin?" So when she came back home, my wife, she said, "Are you becoming a fucking celebrity or what?" but the thing is, he got to see me at some point on social media. The kid is only 13. That's good, because I want already to help fueling watchmaking passion into the younger generation. And this is where I see YouTube as a tool to be able to do that. And then what I am most excited about the year to come is that we've got 2 big launches for 2025. One is a collaboration. The other one has nothing to do with Freak. And I'm very excited about that.
Excellent. So both the greatest challenge and the opportunity. It's the future, and it's social media, and it's reaching the public. So you're off to a flying start. Matthieu, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tim.